plants are amazing. In less than half a year you can go from this to this. Putting aside that it looks like a miniature version of a rainforest in the middle of Southeast Asia, let's find out how I got to this stage, what I harvested and what difficulties I faced. Before I even ordered the polytunnel, which I built in the last video, clicky here, I constructed a miniature polytunnel with some wood, lots of plastic and a 7x12 seedling box. Since I moved in March and started seeding in mid-April, I was very much late to the whole shenanigans already. You can keep this in mind as it affected my harvest considerably. Starting out with 24 seeds of cucumber, 24 seeds of tomato, 12 of spinach, 12 of pak choi and 12 of basil, I began my season. As we skip ahead a month from the time I put the seeds in the box, the frame of the polytunnel now being in place, I started building my first grow bed. I kept it all very simple, just using pallet wood which I got from the co-op next door. Having kept my plants in the same seedlings box in which I planted them a month ago, they were bursting on the seams and outgrowing it rapidly. Thus, pressing me for time and making me not consider the measurements for this grow bed, I basically did a rushed job, but it turned out alright. Putting a bit of cardboard down to keep the grass out, I also cut some tree branches to shape to further add material to fill this 1x1 meter grow bed. I filled it out with raw straw and put in some fertilized soil, some of which I found in the old shed I took apart, others which I ordered online. Taking apart the sproutings of my seeded little friends, the lack of space and earth left me with no other option but to leave some of the plants inside the box. I then proceeded to scatter eggshells to keep the snails out. A few days later, my order of a cubic meter of fertilized soil arrived at my doorstep. 133 euro, by the way. I mixed it with topsoil of my own property and transplanted some more of my seedlings. Looks good, right? Wait a month and you'll see how bad it looks after that. Obviously, since I had a whole polytunnel to deck out, I needed more grow beds. This time I actually spent more than 5 seconds thinking about how I should be constructing this. The system I came up with was the following. Grow beds 80 cm wide, putting it on the very edges of the tunnel, which still allowed me to comfortably reach to the end of it. The middle would be covered by 1m40 by 1m40, accessible from 2 sides and still leaving enough space to kneel between the grow beds. And the other side would be filled with another row of the same 80 cm wide beds. The second grow bed was filled the same way as the first one, with sticks, straw, topsoil, which I got from digging the trench all around the polytunnel, and fertilized soil. There I put the remaining plants in, aside from a basil, which I added later, thinking that it would be better off in the seed box, because it was still fairly small. Small hint, it was not, and I very much should have transplanted it. As you might have guessed by now, preparing that many grow beds takes a lot of wood, a lot of pallets, a lot of preparation. Which I did. Many hours of literally nothing but disassembling pallet wood and tearing all the nails out of it. I built a few of these grow beds, even though I didn't have anything to put into them yet, just for preparation. As my stack of cardboard boxes neared its limits, I figured it was time to get some weed matting. Keeps the grass out, saves time and trouble. I kept it down with all sorts of things, since the polytunnel still wasn't ready and the wind would have blown it away if I just kept it on the ground. Not to mention the grass likes to aggressively grow and bulk up, so I used some heavy stuff to keep it done properly. The 140 by 140 beds were built just as simply as the other ones, with the only difference being that it was really annoying building them since they were big and clunky to work with, and I still didn't have a workbench. Something else that I planted was potatoes, because when you think Ireland, you usually think of potatoes. At least that's what I heard somewhere, or maybe my brain just fabricated this piece of information. Anyways, I didn't give it much thought, as potatoes grow apparently anywhere and without much care, but I gave them a space to grow at least by removing a lot of grass and preparing a small spot next to the polytunnel for them. Mind you, I should have planted these way earlier as well, by the way. Having someone in your area who has a lot of cows makes getting compost thankfully an easy task. He was so nice as to drop his compost down on my property, providing me with enough biofuel for the next full year. Now, having something way more nutritional than dead sticks and plain straw, I began filling the empty beds with some nice and heavy compost, as well as some more of the topsoil and later some more fertilized soil. My plants at this stage were growing rather nicely, even without the polythene to cover the polytunnel. I was harvesting spinach as well as the pak choi regularly and getting some nice extra for my daily meals. As I was sure that my stuff would continue growing, especially with the trench for my polytunnel being completed and the polythene coming on soon, I constructed some supports for my cucumbers on the side of the grow bed. Not really elegant, but it would do its job. Speaking of stuff to continue growing, the tomatoes rapidly outgrew their space in my first grow bed, forcing me to transplant every second one into a new bed. Together with some of the cucumbers, they quickly filled another bed and a half. I left the camera on for a few hours after the transplant, and I think it's amazing how you can see the immediate change in the plant from being put into another spot. After filling some more grow beds with earth, it was time to finally seed something new. Mind you, we have the middle of July. I was not really expecting too much of these seedlings, but they didn't disappoint. In the first bed I put like 3 different herb variants, all of which did not grow whatsoever, probably because I only put fertilized soil in there and no topsoil. Might have just been the absolute worst type of bed I could have put them into. The second bed got filled with rocket and lettuce, which is very easy to grow and grows almost all year round. In the big beds I planted a good amount of bell peppers and some broccoli, courgette and some cabbage, of which just one decided to grow. Fast forward 2 weeks. I finally slapped some polythene onto my polytunnel and all my plants started growing exponentially. It was time for some sticks for my cucumbers. They like something to hold onto usually, so I just grabbed some twigs and built some support rods for them. Every beginning is hard, and as I seem to have established for myself by now, learning by doing has become my very soul at this point. This is Blight. Blight is a plant disease which is caused by insufficient airflow, of which I was the very perpetrator of. It might have been August, but the temperatures and the weather had been rather mild those few days. As of such, I didn't even bother to open the doors to the polytunnel, thus leading to no airflow in the tunnel and the formation of blight. If untreated, the plants would slowly succumb to the disease. Thankfully, there was a relatively simple solution, just cutting off every affected leaf possible, making sure that there was no residue of blight left. The more established plants were relatively fine, they would survive without issue, since only the top leaves were affected. My not even 3-week-old rocket and lettuce, however, took the full brunt of it. I had no choice but to completely remove them to save my remaining ones. I planted some carrots in that row later. The bell peppers got hit hard as well and had to be cut right down to the earth, leaving almost no chance of survival for them. I learned my lesson. The gates to my tunnel are open every day now, leaving no chance for this tragedy to be repeated again. I am not gonna lie, I might have bought 10 kilograms of seed potatoes and might have sort of left them to rot in my house, because I didn't really get the chance to plant them. It is August, I should usually be harvesting them at this point and not be planting new ones. But at this stage, my plan was to just bury them somewhere so I didn't have to think about them anymore, and to maybe have them get dormant in autumn and reactivate themselves in spring so I can harvest them next year. Wishful thinking. I put even less effort into planting these, which was actually possible. I just dug holes and threw them in there, no effort at all. Since I had potatoes left over and there was this long bit of earth left from digging the trench, I planted some of them in there as well.